Misha Golfman, Executive Director of the Mad River Path Association. So the goal of this tonight is to gather public input. What role does public input play at this point in the project?
Okay, so our job as a committee and as a team is to bring the valley together and get as much buy-in from as many constituents as possible, because we believe that collectively we will create a much better route for the path than any of us can do individually. Also, this project will only come to fruition if the valley as a whole supports it, is excited about it, and is willing to work for it. It's a fairly monumental legacy project, and seeing so many people show up on this first meeting is super encouraging and gratifying.
So one of the main, I'm seeing here, primary barriers is, of course, Route 100 itself. It's very fast, people drive very quickly, there are shoulders, but it's still sort of treacherous. How do we solve the problem of calming that traffic along Route 100?
So we're looking primarily at not seeing Route 100 as a barrier, but seeing it as an opportunity, because Route 100 is a corridor, and if it's our corridor, we own it. It's a public corridor through the Mad River Valley. So then the concept that this is a corridor for cars and trucks, this is something we believe in, and so we go along with that. But if we say this is corridor for everyone, and within that corridor there need to be safe passage for motor vehicles and safe passage for non-motor vehicles and for pedestrians, we actually have room, because within that corridor we have between 50 and 100 feet of public right-of-way, and our roadway, both lanes combined, is 22 feet. Shoulders make it 30 feet. We still have 20 feet left. Within those 20 feet, we can have a 10-foot bi-directional path separated from the highway by at least a 5-foot strip of safety. And the work is really in envisioning that and designing that in a way that the road will become safer for cars, because actually the narrower roads are safer roads. They create their own speed limit, because no one likes head-on collisions. And the separation between the highway and the pedestrian bicycle path is necessary for safety of the pedestrians and bicyclists. Yeah. So the Route 100 corridor is a corridor of opportunity.
Lovely. Okay, I have one more question. In terms of inclusion, what are your priorities for making this path accessible to a variety of types of mobility and users of all kinds?
You know, the other day, I dropped Lynn off at the Concord bus station in New Hampshire. So she took a bus to the airport. There was nowhere to charge my car within reach. I dropped it off in town, and I walked on the sidewalks to the shopping mall outside of town. And the whole way there was a path that crossed the road that went all the way to the shopping mall. And what I've noticed, there were a lot of people biking on this path. And at least half of those people were people who were biking on the beat-up, one-speed bikes, squeaky wheels. Those were people, some of these people were clearly people who were experiencing homelessness. Some of these people were clearly people for whom this was their only transportation, and they had a safe way to get to the grocery store. And that really struck me as one of the first goals in accessibility, is creating a path that could be used by everyone without a means to have a car. And then, of course, a path that's really well graded, does not have steep hills or steep turns, that could be used by accessible by not only by bicycles, not only by mountain bicycles, but by everyone's bicycles, by tricycles. So you could push a stroller with a child, where the wheelchair can go, where the adaptive equipment can go. And you should talk to Vermont Adaptive if you haven't yet. And those are all questions of accessibility. But that doesn't stop in the path itself. It needs to include access points, it needs to include bathrooms, it needs to include opportunities for recycling and composting, information about nature. There's a lot that goes to it, all down to dog poop composting. So people don't have to take their dog poop bags and put them in their car. I think that the accessible, inclusive path like this is really important in itself, but it also will spur more sustainable development along the path. And when you have a path like this connecting villages, it becomes really attractive place for young families with children, for example, to come and raise their families. It extends possibilities for older folks to stay physically active because they can get on their electrical bike and go to a grocery store. As our climate warms and our biking season extends, we need to think about a sustainable recreational and commuter infrastructure.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are you, I think one proposal is that the path goes through a lot of your farmland.
Yeah, it covers land that we use, plus land that I own. But if they're going to do what they want to try to do, there's going to be a lot of work involved in it, as anybody knows.
Yeah. What do you think, how do we communicate to other landowners about the importance of this? What sort of resonates with you about the importance of having a corridor like this? It's a hard question, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
It's hopefully, if this goes actually through in some point in time, which is going to take some time, that it will be in part of the right-of-way of Route 100.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take up any ag land per se.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and
It's a balance.
still some ag land left in this valley.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Thanks for helping out. Sure. Are you here at Corridor Segment 2? This is your station?
It is.
Great. And I see you're on the team, but are you also a homeowner, landowner, commuter?
Yeah, I live in Waitsfield in Iresville, and I ride my bike and walk to most places. So, yeah, it's really important to me to be able to get around and also connect to different services and places and recreational opportunities and things like that.
So this is the Yes Tomorrow to Route 17 section, which is where we are right now, basically. What are some of the special concerns about this segment in particular? What are some of the ideas at play here for this area?
Sure. Yeah, I would say the intersection of Route 17 and Route 100 is obviously probably one of the biggest sticking points of this whole, even the whole overall corridor, just because it's, a really important intersection. It's an intersection of two state highways. It's also, there's a lot going on in terms of vehicle movements and things like that. There's also, some difficult grades and some sight lines and stuff, so it makes it difficult to know exactly what to do there, but there's definitely a few options. I would love to see maybe a roundabout. Other people have said maybe a bridge or an underpass, so there's different options, but that'll depend on existing conditions, funding, existing utilities in the area, things like that. And then I would say the other biggest thing is really the wastewater corridor, because that basically is going to cover this entire corridor to Kingsbury Road. So there's really an opportunity if things work out in terms of the design. If they're going to dig up the road for that, there might be some opportunity to co-locate the path when the road gets rebuilt. So that would allow us to maybe even get this section done by like 2028, which is in infrastructure world is not that far away. So so that's a really great opportunity. From Kingsbury Road to Yes Tomorrow, that's definitely going to be more of a challenge. But there's options, and that's why we're here to people to brainstorm. What are the different options and what do people want to see in the community.
Thank you very much. Okay, Killian, are you a homeowner, landowner, renter, commuter, all of the above?
All of the above.
And where do you live right now?
I live next to the covered bridge in Waitsfield.
So very close to a lot of the downtown scene, action paths that will be going through that area. We're here at Station 3, which has to do with the southern terminus in Warren. And one of the questions about the termini, if you will, of the path is what facilities and infrastructure should be available along the path. What do you think for your own use or for others' use would be your priorities to have on the path in terms of facilities, information, other sort of, EV charging?
To ask the question too, as far as what facilities, because in my head I haven't really grasped what all the facilities might be.
Yeah.
I've seen the list there. There's probably even more that aren't on the list. And I'm still just trying to fathom the whole project. But what I will say is my opinion is that the facilities should be interspersed throughout the path, not just at one end or the other. Terminus, I think is the word you used.
Yeah.
Some of the prioritization of each of those facility or functionality components of what facilities might include, amenities, if you will, they probably have varying priorities. More parking at some places, less parking at others. Like if e-bikes or other bike rentals were available, perhaps more in some locations than others. But stuff that's more like maintenance and personal maintenance related, like such as bathrooms or a tire changing station, or things that facilitate the functionality of the path as a whole, should probably be ubiquitous. Maybe even more frequent, like information stations, that are not dependent on a rest area, or tire changing stations that are in every single location. So I think I've answered your question to my best of my ability.
You did great. Let's see what else we've got here. Do you, in your opinion, is it better for the path to follow the road right-of-way or to follow off-road trails that already exist, new trails, a combination of all of the above?
I think more the combination of all the above. I don't want to suggest things that encourage maximal cost,
Right.
But, to an extent, when we're spending the money, I think we should spend the money well, to the extent that, quote unquote, we're spending the money, whatever is involved in the cost factor. And so that ultimately means utility and what is the best use case for everybody. And I think that the more accessible, the more opportunities, the more it ties into existing paths, the more benefit it will offer this whole community. I mean, the value of this proposition, regardless of how it manifests, is, like I said, I'm trying to fathom the thing because this is unfathomable. This is a change that I can't even describe how much it would mean to so many people.
Yeah.
Trying to understand all the ways that we can add to everybody. I think it basically, it's thinking about inclusion and including all the paths and many different opportunities and destinations. I think that's huge.
Yeah, totally. Okay, thank you very much. And are you a homeowner, landowner?
Renting.
Renting? Where are you renting?
Where am I renting?
Yeah.
Right next to the Hartshorn place.
Oh, nice. Okay. So, since you're new to town, did you move from somewhere more rural, more urban? Okay, Burlington. So, in a place like the Mad River Valley, how do you see our human-powered transportation coming together in the most effective way? Burlington has a lot of great examples that we're trying to kind of model after in terms of the Burlington bike path. Do you think we could do something like that here?
I'm sure. I mean, it all takes money, I guess, But there's a lot of land. There's a lot of already bike paths and so on. A lot of mountain biking things and gravel. I started gravel biking now, and it's all great. I think it could happen. It's just a matter of getting it coordinated and paid for.
Yeah, for sure. So, how do you think, in terms of some of the money will come from the government, ideally? Some of it will have to come from the community because even the federal grants require private matching. How do you get everybody on board to see the value in a project like this and actually be able to fund it, not just from the government?
That's a good question. Very good question. And what would you say to that question?
A lot of work, a lot of persistence, a lot of trying something. Fundraising,
So,
yeah.
How I just haven't thought about it yet.
Fair enough. And that's fine. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Welcome to town. What's your name and where do you live? And are you a homeowner, landowner, renter, commuter, all of the above?
My name's Liza Kane. I live in Moortown. I grew up in Waitsfield, lived away for a long time, but I live in Moortown. I commute by bicycle most days during the seasons that I can. I don't do it in the winter. I live on Moortown Common and I commute to Red Hen Baking Company. So it's mostly dirt, a little bit on 100B.
Nice. Okay, great. And what are some of the improvements that you would like to see for that bike commute of yours?
My commute is great.
Yeah.
I feel really fortunate because, like I said, a lot of it's dirt. And in Middlesex Village, it's a little bit tricky, but I think because there's traffic coming already, just because it's a tight intersection, it's okay. Because I live in Moortown, I ride through Moortown Village to Waitsfield a lot, and that's the challenge. The Moortown Village, getting through those S-turns and getting to Pony Farm Road is, I feel lucky because I've done a lot of cycling in cities and stuff, so I feel comfortable on the road. But I know a lot of people that don't ride there because of that tightness.
So in terms of, you bring up a great point about following the roadway versus off-roading, and ideally it'll be a little bit of a mix of both. Do you have ideas about, which type would be best in which area based on where you live or what you're seeing in the sections that you travel most?
Well, that Moortown Village section, I feel like there's no way around it. The river's there and residents are there. It's going to have to be off the road. And that's fine with me. I think where it's natural, like 100B, where it's wide, it makes sense to have everyone there. And that way cyclists and automobiles can use the rules of the road. I think what gets tricky is when it's really tight and then cars don't know how to handle cyclists, even though they learned that in driver's ed.
Right.
What to do. And then I guess Waitsfield's a little bit similar. It's wide enough that most automobiles, I think, are okay with it. I like the idea of a combination of both off and I also like to run and walk, and so it serves that purpose too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Are you a homeowner, landowner?
I'm a homeowner in Waitsfield.
Awesome. And what are your primary modes of transportation right now?
Well, it's bike, foot, and car.
And what are some ways that would help you be more of a bike and a foot person and less of a car person in terms of infrastructure around here?
I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's an off-road, multi-purpose path. The biking on the shoulder used to be something I was interested in, but with the volume of traffic, I'm just really not interested in sharing the road with cars.
Fair enough. So in terms of your priorities for this path, what do you think is the next step that we're looking at here?
I think stuff like this is super important. I think, it's really a community consensus building really needs to happen, because if we have one section of off-road path and then nothing for 3 miles and then another section, that really doesn't do anything for anybody. It really has to be a really holistic thing that can serve everybody in the valley.
Thank you very much.